Good morning. Or is it good afternoon technically now? Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to the African Burial Ground National Monument. I am Ranger Emily, and I am just going to do a short introduction to our speakers today. Well, we have Chevelle Dixon over here, who is the Pan-African Solutions Consulting LLC founder and managing director. Just a round of applause for Ms. Dixon. And we are also honored to have Samantha Bernardine, who we've been, I feel, chasing a little bit for a while now, from that Flatbush African Burial Ground Coalition. She is the president of this wonderful nonprofit. And we would love to have you all stay for the next hour plus. If it goes along longer, that's fine. We're fine with it if you're fine with it. So, ladies, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Ranger Emily, and to the African Burial Ground National Monument. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming here. Happy Kwanzaa. I'm really excited to talk about what we have to talk about today. And again, a little bit, before I get into that, it was really my honor. As Ranger Emily mentioned, they've been chasing after Flatbush Avenue Burial Ground, and actually it was when I was coming here, I was able to put both of them in touch with each other, and I'm really looking forward to a long relationship between both organizations. So I want to thank you, Ranger Emily. I want to thank the African Burial Ground National Monument. I want to thank all the friends and family who have come to support us, my team, Indonesia, and I also want to thank you, Samantha, for being here. So are we ready?
Yes.
Let's do this. Okay, so the title of our talk today is Erase, Reclaim, Reconciling. Reclaiming and reconciling the erasure of the legacy of slavery in New York City. I'll give a little bit of background. When I was in middle school, do you love our beautiful table right here? Yeah. When you get a chance, please come by the table. Don't knock the lights down when the sun on fire. But actually, a lot of the books on here are books that are currently banned. They're banned in Florida and Texas, and a couple of other states are banning them. And the special thing about these books on this table, a lot of them are mine, from my personal library, with my name, Chevelle Dixon, in it. These are books that I've read, and it's been important to me since middle school. Yes?
Well, I said these books are banned. Where do you get the books from?
Because I had them since middle school, and I'm old for like 20 years. And I also studied African Studies and Economic Development at Harvard University. I'll get a little bit more into myself later. But these are my own personal books that I loved on the train from Brooklyn. Because this is important. They're not going to erase our culture. They're not going to erase our history. It's important that we have them on the table. So that's what we're also doing. We also have the fruits, the corn, the Kinara, right? And other elements on the table. Also, there's some items at the end of this presentation. Please feel free to take. These are some FABG, Flatbush Avenue Burial Ground. We call them FABG for short. They're fabulous, darling. But here's some really cool postcards with some information so you can find out more about them. We'll have our contact information later. Sounds good? You ready?
But why does some people ban these books?
I will talk about that a little bit later. But again, it goes back into the erasure. There's some things that they just don't like people to know. And we're going to talk about, Samantha's going to talk about not only what does it mean to erase history, but also what does it mean as far as historical trauma. And if we're erasing our history, are we not acknowledging that trauma? She's going to get a little bit more into that later. Yesterday was Ujima, the Day 3 principle of collective work and responsibility. Today is Ujamaa, the Day 4 principle of cooperative economics. I intentionally chose these days to have this talk because even the partnership between FABG and African Burial Ground National Monument, that's about our collective work and responsibility to keep the legacy going and make sure that our history and culture isn't erased. So the goals for today. The first goal is to understand our individual and collective responsibility to sustainable community partnerships that facilitate stewardship and cooperative economics. See how that worked right there? And this is exactly why I wanted to bring in future Flatbush Avenue Burial Ground. Our second goal is to reclaim our shared New York City history. We actually had a member from the Lenape, thank you, community, and Samantha's going to go a little bit more into that. It's not just a Black American history, African American history, Native American history. It's all of our history, right? Collectively. So we're going to reclaim our shared New York City identity and understand the impact of historical trauma. And then finally, another goal is to really reconcile this erasure of the legacy of slavery through arts, physical spaces, and storytelling. It's really funny because when I was in middle school, I was like, why are we always talking about slavery? You can't talk about something else. And the fact that it's actually being erased right now, they're trying to erase it, it's frightening. So a little bit about me. Hey, everybody. My name is Chevelle Dixon. I'm the founder and managing director of Pan-African Solutions Consulting. I hail from Brooklyn, New York, and I firmly believe in the power of the Black diaspora partnerships to uplift marginalized people. I'm a graduate of NYU, New York University, with my master's in urban planning and focus on international development. I also have my BA, or we call it AB, from Harvard University with a joint 2 majors, we call them concentrations. I had 2 majors, African Studies and Economics, and I'm also a member of Dixon with Beta Sorority Incorporated, and I have traveled to over 50 countries, including 16 in Africa. Not just traveling, doing work, doing impact, doing community, learning from them, and also teaching them as well. Established in 2013, guys, my business turned 10. Thank you so much. Pan-African Solutions Consulting is a strategic planning consulting services firm that assists Black diaspora-focused organizations, nonprofit organizations, philanthropic donors, and also government agencies with cooperative economic development in Africa, the Caribbean, and urban areas in the United States. We gained minority-owned business enterprise status in New York City in 2020 and also in New York State this year in 2023. Our mission is to create collaborative opportunities that strengthen connections between Africa, its Black diaspora through cooperative economic development, capacity building, and storytelling. So even you guys being here, thank you for helping me fulfill my mission. So thank you as well. So a little bit around me. Let's take it back. So I'm Black American, right? My family's from the South. This beautiful woman over here is my great-grandmother, Mary Alice Mobley. She just turned 97 on November 2nd. Yes. The last year. Yes. That's my lady right there. I'm the great-granddaughter of Mary Alice Mobley, who was born in 1920, as the eldest child of Joe Ben Duke Sr., who was a sharecropper in Johnson, South Carolina. Mary Alice's father made her pick cotton. My great-grandmother actually picked cotton as a sharecropper. And also they had peaches, corn, pecans on the farm right before she went to school. She did not complete her education because she had to work the farm. Even when she had to go to school, she could not go to school until her farm. There's a lot of things she used to talk about her hands, just looking at her hands, her fingers tell so many stories. But she's like, oh, those weevils, I couldn't deal with those weevils. And, so it's just so interesting hearing that, I do not know where my descendants' family come from in Africa. But I can tell you, I know at least my great-grandmother who's still living, and at least back to her father. So my great-grandmother, Mary Alice, she married her husband, Joe Mobley Sr. She married her husband, Joe Mobley Sr., and they migrated to New York City in 1946 after he returned from serving in World War II. So that's a little bit about my family. There's a clicker here. This is my great-grandmother, probably in the 1930s, on the farm. This is the they call it the yard, the front of the yard. This is her sister, Annie Ruth, who actually has an amazing memory. I was like, Annie Ruth, where was this? She's like, if you're talking about that photo, I was like, yes, amazing memory. They call my grandmother a string baby. She was tall and lanky. When she came to New York City, she was a domestic worker, working for a Jewish family. And this is actually my grandfather. And she had 2 twins who unfortunately passed, and that is my great-grandpa, we call him Pop, who was in World War II. So, in May, I had the honor and privilege to take my mother to Africa for the first time. And I did it for Mother's Day. And I was really honored to do that. And I took her to Dakar, Senegal. I took her to the Rio. We had to do some beautiful, fun beach time because, listen, there's beautiful places in Africa, right? It's not all what they want us to think it is, right? But then we went to Dakar, had a beautiful time, and then we had to go to Gorée Island. One thing I want to say about Gorée, well, I'll get to that when I show the pictures. So this is my mom and I at the gates of Gorée Island. This, you have to take a boat. It's right off of Dakar, Senegal. So this is us on the boat. Just notice our faces. Just look at our faces as we go through this. So this is us on the boat. This is my mom as soon as we're approaching. Reflective, thinking. This is us in front of the door of no return. This is me crying. Now, why am I crying? Mind you, I've been to other slave castles. I've been to Cape Coast and Elmina in Ghana in 2005. This actually was a little cubby about yay high, not even a cubby. And that's where they put the bad slaves, the slaves that weren't acting right, the slaves that, it's solitary confinement. And I had to go inside there and just the feeling of emotion. You know, I'm fighting for my freedom and I'm bad, so now I have solitary confinement where I can't even stand up straight. This is my mom in front of the door of no return. One thing I would say, when I was in Ghana at Cape Coast and Elmina, I thought that was like, oh, this is the door of no return, right? People walk from Nigeria, Mali, Benin, Togo to Ghana. I had no idea, and mind you, I studied this at Harvard. I had no idea that actually Dakar, Senegal on Gorée Island was the final stop. So they walked hundreds of miles, then got on a boat in Ghana, and then still made other stops to collect other people. And this was the final place, okay? So this is the final door of no return, okay? This is my mom there. Also in this photo, I also was made 23 years old when I learned that slaves were not only shackled, I thought they were shackled to themselves, they were actually shackled to another person. And not only were they shackled to another person, there's this little ball right here, 10-pound weight that they had, both of them, each person had a weight that they had to carry to keep them strong. So not only are you carrying your weight, somebody else's weight, you're tied to them, you also have to carry a 10-pound weight. You notice our faces are changing. But again, this is my mom. We came back to Dakar. That statue, guys, go to Dakar. It is powerful to see how massive this thing is. And most importantly, the reason why I want to show my Gorée Island experience here at the African Burial Ground National Monument is, if those of you who were here on Tuesday, they just recently announced a formal partnership with Gorée Island, where they're going to be doing exchanges. They're going to do learning from them, and Gorée is going to come here and learn from them. So I actually had the honor and privilege to meet people from the Gorée Island delegation. This is actually Superintendent McKinney, who oversees the burial grounds here in Manhattan. And I was 2 years old when I realized she's a Black woman. Look at that. And this is them in front of outside the actual monument itself, where they took photos. And this is me, 1,000 people. So that's just a little bit setting the stage. I want to show you, that was my experience. I'm going to show you some videos. Just take a moment in for the videos and feel how you feel going through Gorée Island. So this is us on the boat approaching it. Thank you. This is actually inside of the slave castle. There's our guide. Steps to the door of no return. This is me actually walking out before we play it. I'm sniffing and crying at this point. So if you hear sniffing, it's because I'm crying. Just take it in. Imagine walking through the door of no return. Imagine, and then the door, there was actually a plank, right? You're going to just see water. But back then, there was a plank and a boat. That's the last time they touched Africa.
Yeah. And the other day was the bridge. When they get out, bye-bye. The simple shot and gone.
The first time I walked through a door of no return again, like I said, was at Cape Coast. And it was ironic that there was kind of like sail ships coming. And just the thought of like, I saw clouds and imagine never seeing a ship. And then all of a sudden you see something in the distance come closer and closer and closer and closer. It's intense. And then the last one, currently Goree Island, is interesting history. Definitely learn a little bit more about it. But it's actually the location of one of the best schools in Dakar. It's a boarding school for girls. And so these are the girls, they leave every Friday, so on the boat. And these are the girls lining up for the boat to leave the island. This is us leaving. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Samantha to talk about, I don't know what feelings that evoked for you seeing the videos. For me, it was mixed feelings, a lot of trauma. And now I'm talking about, again, mind you, we're talking about erasure. But before we erase something, we have to acknowledge the importance of it. So Samantha's going to take on the rest of the presentation from here. Thank you, Samantha.
Just before I introduce myself, let me just let's sit in that moment, right? Because we're talking about erasure, we're talking about trauma, and that is something that you can't just overlook. That's not a time frame. So thank you, Ranger, for letting us have the time that we need to soak this in. So I want us to just have a moment in that space, in that uncomfortable space, because we're going to be talking about things that are going to make us uncomfortable. And it's okay to be uncomfortable, okay? We are never given the opportunity to be not okay. We're told we're supposed to be strong. We're told that we're supposed to be everything. And especially women and Black women, we carry everything. So we're told you cannot feel, you cannot be anything other than what I need you to be. And sometimes we need to be for ourselves. Yes, my brother. And with that, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So if you have a cell phone, please put it on silent, because we want to respect the feelings that we're going to be feeling. We want to be able to hear and be in the moment right now. So if you have a cell phone, I'll give you a few minutes to put it on mute. And I will, here you go.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about this slide. So I would love to introduce our fabulous guest speaker who is joining me on this Kinara-side Chat, Samantha Bernardine. She's the Flatbush African Burial Ground Coalition president. Samantha is born in Brooklyn. Look at us Brooklyn ladies running things. Whose parents are from the island of Grenada. She received her bachelor's degree in marketing from Franklin Pierce College in 1998 and a master's degree in information technology management from Polytechnic University in 2008. Ms. Bernardine made her career change after 16 years in social services to education, becoming a high school special education and history teacher at the High School for Youth and Community Development in the historic Erasmus campus in Flatbush, Brooklyn, New York. There's a couple of famous people from Erasmus who went there. Yes, they are. Ms. Bernardine believes in the power of standing up for justice and addressing injustices wherever she can. Her current passion has been working with the African descent community of Flatbush, Brooklyn, and stewarding the sacred African burial ground next to Erasmus, That's right on Church Avenue. And in Nostrand, Church Avenue, Nostrand, Bedford. Yeah. That was slated by the city of New York to become a housing complex in 2020. Through her and numerous members of the community, they were able to stop the city and from further desecration. For 3 years, the advocacy of Miss Bernardine and others gave birth to the Flatbush African Burial Ground Coalition. Can we give an applause for that? Through their leadership, the history and contributions of African and indigenous people are being recognized and told by the descendants. And without further ado, I'm turning it over to our guest speaker, Ms. Samantha Bernardine.
Thank you. I'm one who has to write. So everyone should have gotten some notepads and pens. And if there are thoughts that come to mind, please put it down. We may not be able to answer everyone's question. A question may come about. Write it down. So that you're not thinking, oh, I wish I could have said that and didn't have the opportunity to. This is your opportunity. We want you to, if not leaving here with all your questions answered, at least you know that you turned them in and we will respond back later on. So if you haven't gotten a notepad or a post note and a pen, just put your hands up and we can give you some. And with that, let me thank none of this work can be done by one person. And this work has been done through many community members. I want to thank my board members who are here, Ms. Allison Martinez, who's giving out the post-it notes, Ms. Chantal Jones. We have Laura, who actually volunteered for the National Monument Museum and is one of our trustees. And Shauna Sobo, who is not here at this moment in time. She's actually in Ghana. And she gives her regards. I want to thank the National Park Service and all of its rangers for helping this event be possible. The amazing Works and Queens, my warrior queens, who are part of our board, other members of other organizations who have helped to be part of the coalition, past and present, and hopefully you as future members. I want to thank the Flatbush community and all of Brooklyn, BK in the house, Brooklyn, for crossing over so that we can be here, as well as the amazing support of my support system. This work that we're going to be entering into, the journey that I hope to take you on, is going to be taxing on oneself. And if you do not have a support system, you cannot do this work. And it's a lonely work. And it's a hard lift. So I want to give great credit and honor to my mother, who is here, Ms. Melina Bernardine, and to my sister, Amanda Bernardine, and to all of the descendants who are around, my dad, who's currently in Grenada, and my son, who's probably sleeping right now. But I'm giving him this moment, right? As we celebrate the fourth principle of Ujamaa, which is whose essential commitment is to practice and share social wealth and the work necessary to achieve collectively. Ujamaa literally means familyhood and suggests a shared of work and wealth in the manner of family. Therefore, as of right now, we are all family together. So, thank you, family, for being here and for participating. So yes, give it up to yourself. Before we move forward in today's presentation, I want to let you know that this presentation, once again, is going to be emotional. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster. In setting the tone and hopefully the actions we are all going to be having in celebrating this principle, we are going to address our mental health. So I want you to be okay with not being okay. And if something that you are learning or that you recall today, take a moment. And as I said, you can jot them down in your notepad. If the emotions are too overwhelming, feel free to walk away. I would not take offense because I know what this work does and what you're going to be experiencing. Chevelle basically set the tone with the videos, and I was trying not to cry a little bit because seeing the door of no return, you hear it, you see pictures of it, but the video kind of puts you in that moment, in that spirit, in that place. So I want us to feel as though that this is a safe space to feel those emotions.
If I may, Samantha, I also came prepared. I have boxes of tissue over there,
Yes.
so feel free to cry away.
Yes, tears are great. And for people who say tears don't, especially for the black men who are here, let me shade to you. And they say that black men are not supposed to cry. Let me explain something to you. We were giving this for a reason. Tear ducts are designed by the higher power for reasons. Therefore, if you do not let it work, it would not be able to heal you. So I'm hoping that we all are healed, or at least address the issues that are blocking us from being fully healed. Okay? But black people love doing word calls, right? So when I say yes, fam, you are going to say yes, fam. And this is a way to make sure that we are all together on this journey. Yes, fam?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, fam?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So before we go further in our time together, I want us to first give honor to the original stewards of this land that we stand on and the ancestors we will learn more about today. So let us take 5 seconds to be in a moment of silence as we honor those and give them the acknowledgement that they so rightfully deserve. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What is trauma? The American Psychological Association, APA, defines trauma as an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, a natural disaster, and/or violence, such as rape. Short-term responses are typically shock or denial, while long-term effects can affect us when we have flashbacks, we have strained relationships, and we have headaches, like physical nausea that will happen. These are normal responses to abnormal events. Our bodies are well equipped to deal with stressful events. We have a built-in response system known as fight or flight. Stress triggers our fight or flight mode, which prepares our body to effectively manage those situations. When a person is traumatized, the alarm system goes off. Our activities in the brain, memory systems, are all overwhelmed in intense situations, and the body's ability to return the mind to its restful place. The effects of these traumas can cause multiple symptoms, such as memory problems, psychological distress, relationship problems, social withdrawals, fears, anger. And it's okay to be angry. A lot of what we're going to be experiencing is anger. And we go back into flashbacks and memories, wondering why are these things happening? Why am I thinking? Why am I dreaming about these things? The historical trauma is multi-generational. Trauma experienced by a specific culture, racial, or ethnic group. It is related to the major events that oppress a particular group of people because of the status as oppressed, such as slavery, the Holocaust, forced migration, violent colonization of Native Indigenous people. In a case, we are explicitly forced on these trauma experiences by Black people in the United States, such as slavery, the Civil War, Jim Crow laws, and continued political, social, and economic segregation are all examples of historical trauma that we experience. When we look at these events as a whole, they represent a history-strained community, disruptance, and devastation. I want to also include war-torn areas. And what I mean by war-torn areas, I'm talking about areas that experience violent attacks on a continuous basis. I'm talking about communities that have to deal with gun violence. Every time that we turn, we're hearing that someone got shot. In 5 years, last year was my first school year where I did not lose a student. Prior to that, in 5 years, from 2017 to 2022, I lost 9 students. 1 from natural causes. 1. Last Saturday, I had to attend a basketball tournament for one of my students and actually bought a book. The mother of the family created a book in honor of him. December 23rd, he was stabbed to death, wrongfully identified by another gang member. He was not part of the gang. He just went to the barbershop to get a haircut because the next day they were going to take a family Christmas picture. He graduated 2 years prior to his death. So when we talk about trauma, we sometimes have to let that go in order to function, but it stays with us. So when we're talking about ancestors, we're not talking about ancestors who are senior, who are older, who are greater, who are a little more defined in the face. We're talking about ancestors who are young. We're talking about ancestors who were trying to come into this world. Because we're not going to talk about women who have lost their children during birth because our system has been designed in a way to forget them. So I'm going to just do a little reminder. If you have a phone, please put it on mute. Historical trauma. We live in a historical trauma daily. These things that we have, cell phones that I just told you to put on silence, we see it every day. How many of us on Instagram? I know my mom would never put her hands because she's anti-technology, right? Facebook, Twitter, or former Twitter is what it's called, X now, I don't know, whatever it is, right? We see it every day. We watch the news. We listen to the radio. We're constantly seeing our trauma constantly in our face. Historical trauma has a lasting effect. Every time we see something, we are taking in that information and we holding on to it. We cannot ignore the current race-based stressors, including discrimination, oppression, and microaggression. I want to give thanks to our team who put together this trauma toolkit. And we hope to get your information so that you can be part of our mailing list, because we can email you our trauma kit, because this is about 100 pages, but it is deep into the work of addressing trauma. In these two charts that we put together, right? We put it together for a simple reason. To have a clearer understanding that these two charts give a great visual on how Black individuals and communities have endured trauma for generations to generations. There are many similarities between the intergenerational and colonization. You cannot have one without the other. They go hand in hand. There is a historical mythical theory that the solution to Black people's problems is that they need to pull themselves from their bootstraps. Ever heard that term before? Yes. But if you don't have boots, how can you pull up anything? Just want to say that. All right? Take that as a moment. As if the issue is a bottom-up approach, right? This is where we are. Just pull yourself up. You'll get up there. Just pull yourself up. You just don't want to do that. How many we have been categorized as lazy? Oh, we built this. How can we be lazy? We have no time to be lazy, right? That's a luxury. the approach that we have from this bottom-up approach is not realistic. If you really look at it, our trauma starts from the top. It starts from the nation. Our nation leaders and laws to our local leaders and laws that turn us as a people against each other, that don't look at us, that don't acknowledge our existence, that tells us that we do not exist and we do not matter. What happens in the nation affects our community. What happens in our community affects our families. And whatever our families go through, it trickles down to who we are as individuals. Story. I'm named after my dad, right? And my dad and that is my buddy. And when I was little, you could not tell me nothing about my dad. Sorry, Mom, love you. I have a scar, right? Mom knows them. I have a scar above my eye. And my mom told me that I got it when I was about 2 years old. Because every time my dad went to work, I would run to the door to greet him. And he would grab me up. And one particular day, I went running, took off, and ran into the edge of their nightstand, kitchen. See, I didn't know which one. I thought it was the bedroom. Okay. And cut my eye where I had to go get stitches. So there are times when my dad and I may get into it. I'll be like, I got a scar for you. I love you so much. Right? So I was always a daddy's little girl. And then my sister came. And not that I was jealous of my sister, I was overly protective of my sister. And still is. That was my baby before my son. I had her. So I say all this to say that when I was in elementary school, and this is during the 80s, early 90s, my mom, who was very active in the school community as a parent and community activist, which is why we are the way we are, overheard one of the school officials talk about, or actually was over the loudspeaker, and they were telling the students, if there's a man in your house, to report them. Now, for those who may not know, in the 80s, in the 70s, Black men were not allowed to be in the household with their children. You could not get government assistance if the father of the child was in the home. So when we talk about Jim Crow laws, we're not talking about only the South. We're talking about an entire, again, national system that trickled down to the communities. This was in school. And unfortunately, yet unfortunately, I was one of the only students in my class that lived with my birth father, that was married to my mom, and that I can go to and say, that's my dad. And when my mom heard that, she had issues with the school leaders. I said, why would you make such a statement for little kids? My dad got afraid because coming into this country as an immigrant, one thing you learn, you don't go to anybody's jail. There's an old reggae song that says, you didn't leave home to come to Rikers Island. I won't sing it for you because I don't want to break your ears. But for those who may know, you know you don't go to Rikers Island. So the love and the affection that my dad and I had up to the age of 10 stopped. Because he feared that if I said something proudly about my dad, that he and my mom would get in trouble. That caused an effect and trauma on me. Because my sister was still young. He will hold her and hug her, but give me that type of hug, so I felt that he did not want me and rejected me. So when we talk about trauma, it comes from the top. It doesn't come from the bottom. It is dictated from the top. Colonization. Colonization is the same way as well. And because of time, we will go through all this. Again, we cannot do this work without giving acknowledgement to the indigenous people who were here. The Lenape people, which actually means people, is quite important. So from the 1600s, it is documented that before Europeans were ever touched this land, the Lenape people stewarded this land on this island that we call Manhattan before they were forced to move across the river to Brooklyn. In the removal of the Lenape people, the Dutch used Black and African slaves to clear this area. In this map, you can see that from Manhattan, where we are right now, across the river, there is a straight line that goes to what we know today as Flatbush, Brooklyn. The thousands who were born before 1799 continued to be slaves. But in 1999, New York gradually freed future generations of African descendants who otherwise would have been born into slavery. Historical acknowledgement. When we talk about historical trauma within the Black and Indigenous people, we are talking about the continuing reference of streets, buildings that are named after slaveholders. It is also no secret that these land thieves who would not include or exclude the number of enslaved peoples and their graves. Hence, the uncovering news of the African burial ground in Little Caribbean known as Flatbush, Brooklyn. So Nostrand Avenue, and again, I'm a Brooklynite. I did not know. I didn't know.
I live up on Nostrand Avenue. And honestly, just the fact that not only we're not just talking about Black, these are slave owners. The history was erased that they were slave owners. I literally passed Nostrand Avenue all the time.
Yep, absolutely. How many people are from Bed-Stuy? All right. We say Bed-Stuy don't die, right? All day, every day, mad. Right? Not knowing that the Stuyvesants were slave owners. So as we walk around and we say it proudly, because we're a proud people, we don't know the true history behind it. So it makes me really question, what was I so proud of? What does being a Brooklynite really mean? And that's where we talk about erasure. This is a picture right here, a map of what is Bedford and Church Avenue of 1855, which is documented as being a African burial ground. So, as a people, let me first say, yes, fam?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, fam?
Yes, ma'am.
Because there's a lot, all right? We, the people, with these words that our drafters of the United States Constitution established the idea of self-governing union, one built and ruled by its residents. But when it is written, or when it was written, people, the founders did not include residents who did not look like them, that was not part of their class, or match their gender. In our research, we found that the city of New York was very much aware that the area known today as Bedford and Church Avenue was a burial ground for the African descendants since the mid-1800s. Not put in a 9, not put in a 2, 1800s. They knew that this land, this sacred land, was a burial ground for Africans. However, due to urbanization, the area was digged up, and currently the plot of land that we are fighting for and still fighting for is there. We create this timeline to visually see and prove to the city and others of their participation in the historical trauma and erasure of our history. As the village of Flatbush became the official neighborhood of the borough of Brooklyn, the oldest wood frame school was replaced by a solid brick building and renamed as the Public School 90. PS 90 stayed open and active for over 100 years on top of our ancestors. In 1951, the city of New York closed PS 90, but later leased the building to the Yeshiva University, where they became a high school for boys, Jewish boys, in 1954. 13 years later, the building became a school for Jewish girls until the 1990s. By 2000, the building became abandoned and sealed off for future use. In 2007, the building was given landmark status, but then demolished in 2016 due to dangerous conditions. It is important to note that even though the building structure received landmark status, the land did not. Therefore, when the building was removed, the landmark status was gone as well. I must point out the landmark status was not based on the original use and purpose of the land, which was the burial ground for our ancestors. But the site was held, or rather honored, because it was the first school in the area. We were able to locate news articles from 1890 to 1904 noting human remains were found in this area and noted that the area was the land for African burial grounds. But it was there that the information stopped. So the information stopped in 1904. No one talked about the fact that this was a burial ground. All of the generations of people who attended Erasmus proudly did not know that next to them were Africans, freed and enslaved.
And if I know, they're still there. Just like the building that we're in right now, there's 12,000 people buried under us. At the end of this, I want you please to join the exhibit, and learn more about this. Thank you so much, Samantha.
No problem. So what happens to the Flatbush African burial ground is part of an epidemic pattern of erasure. Black spaces that are excluded from New York City. Our work is to reclaim our history and to make space for our continued future of these lands. And it's very hypocritical of our lovely government to say that they honor us and yet don't acknowledge us. Yes, fam?
Yes.
I'm just saying. Our amazing researchers were able to identify an indigenous author and activist, China Bullock, I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong, from the Seneca Nation, who defined paper pen genocide because that's how they were able to get us out and continue to use that. And the term is used to describe the intentions, descriptions of documents, and records related to a particular group of people, usually with the intent to erase their history and culture. The United States has used a tactic to eliminate our present and existence of Native Americans and African American cultures. In preparing for today, I thought it was perfectly set up. Divine power, the ancestors were talking. So as part of the erasure, eminent domain is another tactic that's used to expand on our trauma. As an example of the destruction of the Seneca village that's in order to build Central Park. Other examples of that I had listed here is where we are right now within the 5 points. So for those who may not know, and again, our history is so long that an hour cannot cover it. The 5 points, which we have from Chinatown all the way to the Greenwich Village, what the Dutch used to do is that they will put African slaves as well as free, in between the indigenous people. So if ever the indigenous people wanted to fight back, they will attack the slaves before they get the Dutch. In 1830s, the African American land investors organized and were able to create their own community in Weeksville, Brooklyn, that still exists to this day, and I beg of you to please visit them. And lastly, in Staten Island, Sandy Ground was also a freed African American population that was established prior to the Civil War. Anyone ever heard of Robert Moses? He did a lot to destroy communities. This is an example of what he did to us in breaking up our communities, in the idea of urbanization and urban renewal. And I just wanted to point out how, and credit to my brother, he always talks about how the roads in heading to Long Island, especially in Jones Beach, was designed in a way that was so low that a bus cannot travel underneath it. It was in order for you to block these not only blacks and brown people, but also poor people. At this moment in time, I want us to think about, because we're going to go right into the burial ground and into the activities. Burial grounds are being discovered each and every day. We have been contacted by many African burial grounds throughout the nation. So our work that we're doing in Brooklyn spans beyond the borough of Brooklyn, spans beyond New York. And in honor of that, I'm going to ask Fam, yes, Fam?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to ask Fam to come together, and I want you to read out these names, because by reading out these names out loud, we are letting our ancestors know that we hear them, we see them, we remember them, and we honor them. So let's first go with Woodland Cemetery. So let's all read it together.
Woodlawn Cemetery, Park Memorial Garden Cemetery, Ridgewood Cemetery, Boyd Carter Memorial Cemetery, Buena Vista Cemetery, Gibson Grove.
And for those who did not know of the Flatbush African Burial Ground, we also have the Sankofa Park. We have the Harlem African Burial Ground in 126th Street, which is being also shared by the MTA. We have the Joshua Rodman Park. In Hunts Point, in the Bronx. We have Elmer's African Burial Ground in Queens. And recently, if you did not notice, in 2001, we found out, and anyone who watched the news found out, that there was a cemetery in Staten Island that was part of the Episcopal Church that was paved over. None of the remains were disturbed. It was just paved over and forgotten. And people parked their cars and got their milk and juice and played their lotto and everything else on top of our ancestors. And there are many more that are going to be discovered. I thank you for this time, and I'm going to yield back at this moment.